Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. Today, I stand with my colleagues in the House to address a critical issue, tort reform in Pennsylvania. The court system exists to protect those who have been wronged. However, our civil justice system is facing significant challenges that affect every one of our Commonwealth citizens. In fact, there are significant challenges that are facing our citizens, and we are committed to enacting legislation that protects both individuals and businesses while ensuring fairness for all. One of the most pressing concerns is the burden of excessive litigation, which stifles growth and drives up costs for families and businesses alike. Take our healthcare industry, for example, which is overwhelmed by predatory lawsuits that target favorable venues, regardless of where incidents occur. This practice inflates liability premiums and will ultimately shoulder those costs on the patients themselves. Furthermore, the alarming rise of third-party litigation, where injured plaintiffs sell their rights to these third-party groups at a steep discount, almost an investment, if you will, and creates a prolonged and costly legal battle that is primarily benefit for those third-party litigators, not the plaintiffs themselves. By establishing a level playing field, we can empower businesses to innovate and thrive without constant threat of unjust lawsuits. This not only strengthens our economy, but also enhances the quality of life for all Pennsylvanians. Now look, this package of bills, some of which have been introduced, some of which are ideas that I think as House Republicans we are trying to advance to move forward next session, are consumer and business friendly. And look, our courts are set up in a way so that we can litigate our issues, but we have got to make a level playing field. We have got to make sure that people are able to bring suits in the communities they live in, with juries of their peers where they live, and have a fair trial. The people that file lawsuits should be those that are benefiting from these actions. There is a path forward here, and we need to make sure that Pennsylvania is competitive through tort reform legislation, and together with my colleagues, we intend to take decisive action to reform our civil justice system and pave the way for a brighter future. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Kurt Schroeder to give remarks from his organization. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Representative Ecker. Good morning. I'm Kurt Schroeder, the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Coalition for Civil Justice Reform. I want to commend Representative Ecker as well as the representatives who are standing with us today, many of whom are introducing important pieces of legislation in this package or otherwise supporting these efforts. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your support. Liability, the Pennsylvania Coalition for Civil Justice Reform is a statewide association. We consist of Pennsylvania employers, healthcare providers, taxpayers, coalitions, a coalition that also includes associations, statewide associations, and others. Liability reform in this Commonwealth is long overdue. The last major civil justice reform occurred back in 2011 with passage of the Fair Share Act, which restored fairness to defendants who no longer had to pay the full amount of a verdict, even though they might only be minimally responsible for the damages. And since that time, appellate courts in Pennsylvania have engaged in legislating from the bench to weaken and rewrite laws that have been passed, such as the Fair Share Act, that sought to restore balance to our civil justice system. Another example of what has happened in Pennsylvania is medical malpractice venue. Now, in response to the medical liability crisis of the early 2000s, the Supreme Court enacted a common sense rule that said a medical malpractice case can only be brought in the county where the cause of action arose. Then that rule stood and worked very well for about 20 years. Then almost 2 years ago, the current Supreme Court rescinded that rule, and now doctors and hospitals are subjected to suit in the hostile Philadelphia courts. And now defendants in all types of cases are under threat of ruin by nuclear verdicts, those that are $10 million or more, that are pumped out on a regular basis in the Philadelphia courts. These are just but two examples of issues that will be addressed by this liability reform package. There are many, many good bills in this package that are sorely needed in Pennsylvania. I wish I had time to give some remarks about each and every one of them, but believe me, they are all important, and once again, I commend all those who will be sponsoring and introducing them. Now, the Commonwealth's liability climate has been on the decline since 2011. A hostile liability climate inhibits job creation, it adds costs to consumers and employers, it scares businesses away from locating in Pennsylvania, and reduces access to health care services while it increases the costs of those health care services. So the Pennsylvania Coalition for Civil Justice Reform calls on the General Assembly and the Governor to work together to enact these common sense proposals in this package, which will improve our economy and bolster the availability of health care to all Pennsylvania citizens. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Representative Dawn Kiefer from the 92nd Legislative District. Our founding fathers formed a system of government with three distinct branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, to keep each other in check. At times, one branch oversteps the other, and action must be taken to rectify the situation. During the 1967 and 68 Constitutional Convention, language was added to our state constitution that puts the Supreme Court and its interests ahead of the interests of the people of Pennsylvania by allowing it to a simple majority of the court to suspend any law it believes runs afoul of this overly broad grant authority. That means for just 4 people can suspend a law approved by the majority of House members, senators, and signed into law by the governor. This has effectively blocked public policy-making branches of government from establishing policy in many important areas. My bill in this package, this comprehensive package of legislation, fixes the problem by amending the Constitution. Specifically, House Bill 1124 would continue to allow the Supreme Court to promulgate rules of procedure and regulate the practice of law. However, such rules must be consistent with the will of Pennsylvania, acting through their duly elected representatives in the House and Senate. In simple terms, the power to make law, whether it's substantive or procedural, would ultimately reside with the legislature, where it belongs. This bill reestablishes checks and balances, sorely missing right now, what we hold dear, and what protects the citizens from the overreaching branch of government. And I would like to thank my colleague, Torren Ecker, for leading the charge in this package of reform bills, and hopefully we could get something moving. Next session, get this teed up, that we can get these things in place to help propel our economy of Pennsylvania and lure in the businesses that won't come here because of this type of hostile policy that we have on the books. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Jonathan Greer of the Insurance Federation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Greer. I am President and CEO of the Insurance Federation of Pennsylvania, which is a state trade association that represents insurers in all lines of insurance. As I was preparing my comments for today, I was reminded of former Governor Tom Ridge. I think, Kurt, you and I are the only 2 people left here who remember we were in this town at that time. But the catchphrase of his administration and the goal of his administration was to make Pennsylvania a leader among states and a competitor amongst nations, if you remember that. And unfortunately, it's been a long time since Tom Ridge was governor, but that conversation has continued long after he left office. And unfortunately, the conversation recently, in terms of our competitiveness, has focused more on our regulatory climate and to a lesser extent, our tax policy. And missing from that conversation is our litigation climate. And that, I'm very thankful to have Torren and his colleagues introducing this package of bills to restart that conversation. It is affecting Pennsylvania's competitiveness. It is hurting our citizens. If you don't believe me, ask a maternity ward if they're able to deliver babies in Philadelphia. If you don't believe me, ask a child care facility in Philadelphia that can't find insurance to meet a legal requisite to have it. It is a problem. It is going, and like any problem in life, it's going to get worse until it gets better. The longer you put it off, the harder it's going to get to fix. So it is a tax on Pennsylvania businesses. It is a tax on Pennsylvania citizens. And I realize we're at the end of our session, but I do, echoing Representative Kiefer's comments, I hope that this conversation today serves as a springboard to really deliberate action next session under the leadership of Representative Ecker. Again, thank you for your leadership on this, and we look forward to that conversation occurring.
And again, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I'm going to thank those that are part of this package. And again, this is, House Republicans have stood for many issues, and the regulatory reform, tax policy, and now tort reform as a way to move Pennsylvania truly in a competitive position. We could talk about being competitive as hell, as the governor has said, but we have actually got to pass policies that actually advance that forward. House Republicans have stood in that gap, and I'm proud to be a part of that here with my colleagues today. At this point, we will conclude the press conference. Any questions? Thank you, everybody.